Hi everyone, today I want to speak about the horrific and barbaric atrocities that are taking place in Syria and give it an overview and a perspective from a European perspective and from how it relates to us here domestically in Ireland. We've seen horrific atrocities carried out on vulnerable religious minority groupings in around Syria, in particular on the Mediterranean seaboard, where we've seen this new regime that's put in place because of course, Western infiltration such as the CIA and the permanent deep state to overthrow the Assad regime. And also, this has also been forewarned because we've seen the support of the Al Jolani regime in Syria. Now, Al Jolani, a former, inverted commas, terrorist who was wanted for $10 million and a wanted poster was put up. Do you remember that? But of course, now he's the best friend of the Western elites and the globalists. Because back in December, following the overthrow of the Assad regime, and in advance of the overthrow of the Assad regime, we've seen the CIA infiltration and the coup, for instance, the attempted coups for years and years, and working with nefarious forces to overthrow their regime, all in the name of pushing their agenda and also because of a pipeline that was coming from Qatar to try and use part of Syria, across Turkey to access the European markets and to cut off the reliance on Russian gas. And also we saw Russia come into play in Syria because of the developments of the CIA involvement in that region. And where have we seen this before? We've also seen it in Iraq. We've seen it where 1 million people were killed in a legal war. We've seen it in Afghanistan most recently, and we've seen it in Libya and many, many more countries where we have the involvement of the permanent state in the United States in foreign countries' interests. And really important around this has been the discussions around the Western media, in particular here in Ireland, when we had the overthrow of the Assad regime back in December, where so many people were jumping up and down and saying this is great, it's a liberalisation of Syria. Now, of course, al-Jilani and his cohorts are part of the HTS, which are an offshoot of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And of course, Al-Qaeda and Jilani himself was second in command of that regime in Iraq as well. But of course, he's put on a suit now and he's acceptable to the Western leaders and the globalist masters in their view of global dominance. Now, what's very, very fascinating about what's been happening is that the absolute disgraceful and despicable attacks on religious minorities, such as Christians, that have been essentially ethnically cleansed from this region as well. And this is absolutely should be called out by any sort of person who's interested in democracy. And of course, this won't be called out by so many of those who are interested in democracy, because even today, the European Union have come out with a statement to condemn the pro-Assad elements that are attacking the government, so-called government, puppet government forces in Syria. You really could not make this up. It's absolute lunacy. This is the same European Union that put up a flag of Israel a number of years ago at the behest of van der Leyen. The same as van der Leyen now is standing up with the globalists in Syria. The same as van der Leyen is standing up and rearming Europe and spending 800 billion euro of our public money to drag us into war with Russia. And of course, this was always about the cheaper energy sources right across the Middle East to cut off the cheaper energy coming from Russia. And of course, plays into the hands of the United States as well, because they were part of this coup. But at the same time, we've also seen a big part of the coup, but also at the same time, we've seen the Europeans now importing more expensive LNG gas, up to 40-50% higher than what they would get from Russia. And of course, this is environmentally unfriendly. These are the same people that are pushing this net zero agenda, by the way. But this is what's really important with this, because their narrative is falling apart. How can anybody stand with this corrupt, as Emily O'Reilly, the former ombudsman, said, it was like run like a powerful consigliere, part of a criminal mafia group of the European Union, who are completely anti-democratic, who are working against the interests of ordinary people and working with their globalist masters and the permanent state, using the hegemony of the United States, and also part of the Davos clique and the London clique with Keir Starmer. We have so many of these globalist leaders in many countries across the European Union, and in particular here in Ireland. And that's why people like Simon Harris and Micheál Martin will be very slow to come out and condemn what's going on, because they'll say, well, we need peace and all this sort of nonsense, but they won't call out what really led to this overthrow of the regime, which has caused an absolute catastrophe and carnage for so many people in that region. The Kurds in the north of the country, not to mention, we've seen the people, for instance, being ethnically cleansed, and Christians, of those, any people of religious minority, should be supported in any country and respected. And of course, they have huge historical importance in that region. And this has real implications for who they're funding, who they're supporting, and what leads to attacks, for instance, on European territory because of the drive towards radicalization and the drive towards jihadism also as well, and the drive towards the persecution of religious minorities wherever it happens. So always look at who benefits from this, who benefits from the chaos, and at the same time stand up against the nonsense that the European Union is trying to spin to say that they're standing up for freedom and democracy and values in Ukraine. And a lot of the drones from Ukraine that were sent there, public money paid for, were sent to supposedly to ward off the invasion from Russia, were sent off in the black market, and much ended up in the Middle East and in Syria in particular, used by al-Jalani's despotic, cruel, heartless regime, going through streets and towns to ethnically cleanse and use foreign mercenaries as well to ethnically cleanse Christians. It's absolutely just horrific, and it needs to be called out by everybody. You need people to intervene now on this and stand up to what's going on against the despotic European Union. They have no moral compass anymore. They have no authority, essentially, to stand up for the interests of people or claim they're standing up for the people. And the complicit media are precisely the same in what they're supporting and what they're going along with for their few dollars and bit of funding they're getting to keep their mouth shut and to keep the propaganda going and narrative going. They're trying day by day to erode Irish neutrality, to erode Irish sovereignty and drag us towards a militarist union. Now more than ever, Ireland as a neutral country should be standing up for peace, should be standing up for no hand, act or part in war, and especially for these duplicitous liars in the European Union who are more interested in siding up to their globalist masters, people like Macron, perhaps looking for a new job in the World Bank or the IMF, van der Leyen, unelected leader with her dodgy contracts with Pfizer, and also we've seen our own leaders here in Ireland, the Micheál Martin, Simon Harris, and the puppets from the Lowry-led independents going along with this narrative. This is absolutely disgraceful. So it should be called out. I mean, obviously, church leaders and so many people should stand up and call this out and stand up to call a halt to this nonsense. But this is completely manufactured and created chaos that is going to create more chaos in the Middle East, which will spill over undeniably in Europe with an increased immigration chaos and more disasters again. And they'll claim it's humanitarian. We need to support people. But they're the ones that are creating the chaos, and now they're the ones that claim that they're solving it. So please share my videos, and thanks for subscribing to my channel. So from Dublin, Slán, take care.